เมล็ดข้าวไหนรีบหรือไม่โยนปุ๋ยเลยก็มีแต่รีบแล้วก็ไม่งอกไม่งามนะโดยเฉพาะที่สุดปีเอก10 คนนะครับ10 คนนี้ขอให้นั่งฟังทุกคนคงไม่ต้องทำงานอะไรแล้วช่วงนี้นะเพราะว่ากำลังเรียนเรื่องนี้ฟรีในช่วงเช้านี้เขาจะพูดถึงแนวโน้มนะ Trend Instructional Design ก็คือแนวโน้มการออกแบบระบบการสอนดร.โรเบิร์ต ไรเซอร์นี่เขาอยู่ที่เดียวกับกาเย่เมื่อวานถามถึงกาเย่ใครไม่เคยได้ยินคำว่ากาเย่มั้งนะบางคนอ่านเก็ตเน่กาเย่เนี่ยตายแล้วนะอายุสั้นหน่อยกาเย่นะส่วนอีกคนหนึ่งคือเมื่อวานเขาพูดถึงเรื่องนักออกแบบการสอนชื่อบราวน์นี่ถ้านักเทคโนโลยีต้องอ่านหนังสือก็เริ่มแรกบราวน์เจมส์บราวน์นะแล้วก็โทนี่บริกส์นะเมื่อวานเขาพูดถึงใครนะแต่ป้าจำได้ที่เรารู้จักดีอีกคนนึงฮะ2 คนนะพูดถึง2 คนคือมหาลัยเขาเนี่ยจะเด่นทางด้านการออกแบบระบบการสอนสาขาเทคโนโลยีการศึกษาก็ไม่มีเขาเป็นสาขาชื่อเนี่ยชื่อเดียวที่เขามาบรรยาย Instructional Design and Technology Instructional เพราะฉะนั้นเดี๋ยวอาคมก็จะบอกเองว่าเขาเก่งเพราะว่าเชี่ยวชาญในด้านไหนนะครับมาเป็นบ้านแล้วขอเชิญนั่งแถว2เลยนะครับแถว2แถว3นี่รู้สึกจะไม่ทราบมาจากไหนเลยด้านกระบังบ้างของเราเองใช่ไหมศึกษาศาสตร์ยินดีต้อนรับวันนี้เราเห็นโมเดลการสอนแล้วนะนิมนต์ครับอยู่ข้างหน้าเลยก็ได้แถว2นะจริงๆแล้วสาขาหลักสูตรและการสอนจะมาฟังแล้วจะได้ประโยชน์ในการหลักสูตรแต่สาขาเทคโนโลยีนี่ก็เราต้องเล่นดีไซน์อยู่แล้วอินสตรัคชั่นดีไซน์นี่มันหลงที่ตามชื่อหลงนะเพราะว่าเดี๋ยวที่4 โมงเช้า5 โมงเช้าก็จะไปฉันไม่ทราบมีคนเตรียมไหมเดี๋ยวจะได้ไปบอกผมว่าน่าจะโอเคนะเพราะว่าเขาจะใช้เวลาบรรยายไม่เยอะ
นมัสการพระคุณเจ้าแล้วก็นิสิตแล้วก็ผู้สนใจคณาจารย์นะครับในวันนี้ในนามของภาควิชานะครับขอสปีกไทยก่อนนะครับก่อนที่จะเข้าไปสู่สปีกอังกฤษนะครับเพื่อให้ได้ทราบวัตถุประสงค์ตรงนี้ของพวกเรานะครับในการที่ภาควิชาได้จัดบริการวิชาการนะครับเพื่อที่จะให้เราเนี่ยเปิดโลกกว้างนะครับในส่วนที่จะเป็นประโยชน์ในเรื่องของวิชาการวิชาความรู้นะครับให้เราได้มีโอกาสได้พบกับวิทยากรระดับโลกนะครับซึ่งเป็นคนที่มีชื่อเสียงแล้วท่านได้เห็นตรงนี้นะครับท่านเองได้ติดต่อประสานงานมากับทางภาควิชาเนี่ยจนกระทั่งถึงวันนี้เนี่ยทางภาควิชาก็ได้มอบโอกาสวันนี้นะครับเพียงวันเดียวให้กับพวกท่านที่สนใจนะครับเพื่อที่จะได้มารับความรู้ซึ่งในช่วงเช้าก็ดีหรือว่าช่วงบ่ายก็ดีเนี่ยเป็นความรู้ที่เกี่ยวข้องกับพวกเราทั้งสิ้นนะครับก็น่าสนใจแล้วก็ทางภาควิชาเองก็พยายามที่จะสนับสนุนนะครับในเรื่องของโอกาสให้กับพวกเราในเรื่องของงบประมาณบางส่วนแล้วก็ในเรื่องของเจ้าหน้าที่ที่มาดูแลความสะดวกก็ต้องขอขอบคุณทุกท่านนะครับแล้วก็เพื่อให้การบรรยายในวันนี้เป็นไปตามตารางเวลาก็ทางภาควิชาก็ขอขอบคุณทุกท่านที่ให้ความสนใจแล้วก็ขอเปิดนะครับการบรรยายในวันนี้ในโอกาสนี้ครับขอบคุณครับ
the faculty for inviting me, and for all the students and other faculty for attending. And I hope you'll enjoy my presentations today. I hear some sound in the background. What am I hearing back there? You're recording it? Oh, maybe it's out there. That's okay. Before I begin, I want to get a sense a little bit about my audience. So if you are either a student or a faculty member in the educational technology department, raise your hand if you're either a student or a faculty member in educational technology. Raise your hands. Okay, almost everyone. If you're somebody who is not in educational technology, raise your hand. If you're not in if you're in a different department or a different university, I know we have at least one. Raise your hand. Anybody else who's not in the department? Okay, so almost all of you are in the department. The reason I asked that question is because I'm giving two presentations today. This morning, my presentation, 10 Trends Affecting the Field of Instruction, Design, and Technology, is mainly designed for people in your department. It focuses very much on the field of educational technology. This afternoon, just to give you a preview, I'm giving a different talk on effective teaching. This talk is geared for any professor, any student in a college of education or in any college to help them become better teachers. So I'll talk about this afternoon. I have some very funny video clips from movies and so on. So I think you'll really enjoy this. Hopefully you'll enjoy this presentation this morning as well, but I know you'll also like the one this afternoon. Okay. So, I move around a lot, and I also talk fast. So I hope you'll be able to understand what I'm saying. If I'm talking too fast, go like this, say, slow down, okay? And keep up with me by looking at your handouts, okay? Okay, so today we're going to be talking about 10 trends affecting the field of instructional design and technology. I could have had a different title. I could have named the presentation something else. Another name I could have given it was 10 Trends Instructional Designers Need to be Aware of and Skilled at. That could have been a different title for the same presentation. Why is this a good title? Because the trends I'm going to be talking about today are affecting the type of work that instructional designers do. And all of you, whether you know it or not, are instructional designers, or you will be instructional designers. Even our faculty who teach in other colleges, you're designing instruction. You're trying to help people learn. So when you're doing that, when you're designing instruction, trying to help people learn, then you're an instructional designer. And I think these trends I'm going to be talking about are affecting the type of work that instructional designers like you do, and are providing all of us with new tools to help people learn more and do their jobs better. Okay? So that's why I have this second title. The 10 trends I'm going to be talking about are listed up here. I'm going to spend maybe 3 or 4 minutes on each of these trends. Some of these trends are not so new. Some of them are more than 20 years old. For example, this trend called performance improvement started in about the 1990s. This theory of learning, constructivism, started in the 1990s. So some are very old. But if you look up, you can also see, and you can pick out some that are almost brand new. Mobile learning, social media. So some are old, some are new. Some focus on the teaching and learning process. They're theories of how to teach, of how to learn, such as constructivism. Most of them are tools we can use for presenting instruction, like mobile devices, educational games. But all of them are having a significant impact on what people in our field do and how we teach and how we help people learn. And that's why I'm covering these 10 trends. They all are very important tools that are affecting the type of work we do and are providing us with new ways to help improve
มัน
learning.
กว้างเลยมันเปิดกว้างมันต้องไปข้างหลังนะ
Okay, how's my pace so far? Are you able to keep up with me? Okay.
ไม่เป็นไร
Okay, notice, before we start discussing the trends, I want you to notice the name of the field. I didn't say educational technology. I said instructional design and technology. Why didn't I say educational technology? What I'd like you to do is think about the words educational technology. When I say to you, I'm in the field of educational technology, or when you say to someone who you meet, your parents, or someone on the elevator, or someone on the street, I'm in the field of educational technology. What is the first thing they think of in their mind? What do they first think of in their mind? Just most likely, they're thinking about computers. As soon as you say educational technology, they're thinking about computers. 40 years ago, when I started in the field, and computers, especially personal computers, were not very common, they were thinking about instructional films or instructional television. They were thinking about media. So my concern with using this term for our field is the narrow meaning often associated with that term. As soon as we say educational technology or instructional technology, people start thinking of media and certainly media using digital devices, using the computer, using film, video, all are very important, a very important part of our field. But our field isn't just about media. And I'm afraid that when we say educational technology, right away they think, oh, he is the media expert. He knows everything there is to know about media. This has been going on for over 100 years, more than 100 years. In America, the whole field of, we'll call it for the time being, educational technology, started over 100 years ago. And when it first started, when people were thinking of the field of educational technology, they were thinking of what we call audio-visual materials. Things like instructional films, instruction presented via the radio, via television, etc. So during the first half of the 20th century, 1900 to about 1950, if you said, I'm in the field of educational technology, people would think you're an expert in these areas.
ตรงนี้ไม่เป็นไรไม่
Today,
หัวคน
if
จะ
you
บัง
say, I'm in educational technology, people think, oh, he uses computers, he uses the internet, maybe he uses digital video, and so on. Again, they're all thinking about, or most of them are thinking about media, that you're involved with media. And you are. All of us are involved with using media. But we do a lot more than simply use media. We also design the instruction that we present via the media. We're not just about bringing out a computer, we're about designing the program that's delivered via the computer. We're about creating the instruction on the video that is then presented to. So our field is not only about media, but about designing the instruction that's presented via the media. My way of thinking, this is even more important with the media than the media, because you can have a very good medium like the computer or digital video, but if the instruction you present via the medium is not good, people are not going to learn. So the field of educational technology, as we used to call it, or some of us still call it, not only involves media, but it also involves designing the instruction that you present via the media. As far back as 1970 in the United States, people in the field of instructional technology or educational, we called it instructional back then, when they defined the field of instructional technology, said It's not about media, it's a systematic way, a process of designing, carrying out, and evaluating the total process of teaching and learning. So when you look at this definition, it's not about media, it's about a process of designing instruction. And I think people in our field need to be clear that we're not just about media, we're about designing good instruction. It's interesting, if you go to Webster's dictionary, which is the dictionary that most people in America use, and you look up the word technology, you would think they talk about machines, equipment, but they don't. The first two definitions, and you can go check this afterwards, don't start checking your phones now, I promise. The first two definitions of technology in Webster, the practical application of knowledge. It's not about equipment, it's about a process, practically applying knowledge to solve a problem. Practically using instruction to help people learn more. The second definition, right below it, a manner of accomplishing a task via some process, using processes, technical processes to solve problems. So we see that when we use the term educational technology, we end up having most people focus on media, when in fact educational technology not only deals with media, but it deals with designing instruction and hopefully doing it in a very systematic way, being very step-by-step careful in how we do it. So, in summary of what I've said so far, the field of instructional educational technology does involve using media, it certainly does, but it also involves the systematic design of instruction. And if we use this term, people have a tendency to focus on this and not focus on that. That's unfortunate. So, if these are the two things we want people to, that comprise our field, if these are the two main ideas that comprise our field, I think we need a clearer title for the field and a better definition. A title that encompasses both of these things and a definition that mentions both of these things. Okay? Okay. So, this isn't my title. Other people came up with this title before, but I think it's a good one. Some people in our field like to call the field, and I do too, Instructional Design and Technology. Notice the title. It mentions design, and it mentions technology. And although technology can mean a process, if it's up here, a lot of people think of media. So it mentions both design and media. I like that. This is the definition that I wrote back in 2000. My book, which I wrote in 2002 on trends in the field, has become a very popular book in our field. It's popular not because I wrote it. It's popular because I get all the famous people in America who are experts in the various areas to write chapters for the book. When you're as old as I am, I'm 65 years old. I know I look much younger than that. You get to know a lot of people, and then you can ask them to write chapters. So my book is consisting of chapters written by all the experts. And in the book, when I first wrote in 2002, this is the third edition now, I wrote a new definition for our field. And I want to break this definition down into three parts for you so you can see what it contains. It emphasizes three key ideas. First, the design part of the definition means that people in our field systematically design instruction. And if you look at the definition, it mentions the various ways we go about systematically designing instruction. We analyze the problem. Students are not learning about it. Why? We analyze what's the cause of the problem. We design some kind of intervention, some kind of instruction that we hope will solve the problem. We produce or develop the solution. I make a blueprint, then I give it to my media person, and they produce maybe some computer program. We implement it or try it out, and we evaluate it to see whether it works. And then if it doesn't work, what do? We go back and revise it to make it better. So it's a very systematic, organized process for designing instruction. Some people refer to these 5 steps as the ADDIE model, A-D-D. A for analysis, D for design, D D for development, I for implementation, E for evaluation. Add ADDIE. It's a systematic, you see that ADDIE? It's a systematic way of designing your instruction and then testing it out to see if it works. If this lecture today is very bad and I get bad reviews, I'm going to go back and change it and try to make it better, revise it. I'm evaluating it. As a matter of fact, I've given this lecture maybe 25 times. Every time I go back and make it a little better the next time. So this is a systematic process. And it's mentioned clearly in the definition. The definition also mentions media. It says that people in the field of instructional design and technology in this case referring to media, employ a wide variety of instructional media that accomplish their goals. So in other words, we design the instruction using systematic methods, and then we use media to help deliver the instruction that we design. Okay? So in this definition, we mention design, we mention media, and explain both of them. There's one more thing that we mentioned in this definition, and I mentioned in this definition, that you may be less familiar with, and that's something called performance improvement. If you're familiar with the term performance improvement, raise your hand. Okay, so very few of you are. This is a term that's a culture. That's great. This is a term that became popular in the United States in the early 1990s and has become more and more important. And I think it's going to become important in countries like Thailand in the very near future. And this is the first of the 10 trends I'm going to be talking about. I mentioned it in my definition. I say that people who are in the field of instruction design and technology often try to work to improve performance, particularly in the workplace. So, what we've done in the first 10 minutes or so here is I've explained to you what I mean by the term instructional design and technology. It's about media, it's about design, it's about performance improvement. Now, having defined what the field is about, let me explain these 10 trends that I think are affecting the field. And the first one I want to focus on is performance improvement. So, trend number 1, performance improvement. I think there are several key ideas that you should be aware of when we talk about this trend called performance improvement. The first one is the realization that most of you are going to, when you graduate, are going to either work in a school district, in a school, or in higher education. And when I first came to Florida State University, most of the graduates of our program also ended up working in one of those environments. But starting in the 1980s, it started to change. And people who graduated from our program started getting jobs with businesses, maybe a shirt manufacturer, or AT&T, or IBM. They started getting jobs as civilians in the military, working for the military to help design training programs. Or they started getting jobs with the government, helping improve training for government agencies. And I think this is going to happen in developing countries as well. Korea is a perfect example of this. Many of our students are from Korea or were from Korea. And after they graduated and went back to Korea, Korea started recognizing that instructional designers can help people learn not just in schools, but in businesses and so on. So the first important point on performance improvement is that many instructional designers in the United States, and I would bet if I come back in 5 or 10 years here, it'll be true in Thailand too, will end up getting jobs not for higher education, which is great, or schools, but also get jobs in businesses, military, and so on. I would say right now, over 90% of the graduates of the master's level at Florida State do not work in schools or higher education. They work with these kinds of workplace organizations like businesses, government, the military, and so on. That's the key idea. If you're going to work for an organization other than a school, you certainly want people in that organization to learn, to know how to use a lever, to know the processes to do it. But learning is not enough. If a person's working for a big organization and he knows the 5 steps to engage in order to put the sleeves on properly on a shirt, if he lists them out, that shows he's learned it. But the question is, can he do the job? It's easy to remember things, but we can't always translate it into doing the job better. And that's the second key idea behind performance improvement. The goal of the instructional designer is not just to help people learn more, but to help them do a better job in the workplace, to do a better job in the real world. If you're in a course here, in your program, the Educational Technology Department, and at the end of the course, they give you some text, a written test. And maybe it's a test on how to design instruction. And on the test, you say, there's 5 steps in the ADDIE model for designing instruction, analysis. And I say, wonderful, you've learned the 5 steps. That's good, but that doesn't mean you could be a good instructional designer. I now have to see you actually do some instruction, perform the task. So there's a difference between learning, memorizing things, and actually doing a job, performing the skills. And in the 1990s, people in our field started saying, okay, if people are going to work in the workplace for these kinds of organizations, they can't just have people memorize things. They have to help people do their job better, perform better in the workplace. So if we're talking about that shirt factory, for example, we want, and I'm told by my employer, help people learn and do their jobs better in the workplace, perform better. I'm going to want them to perform with less errors. Instead of every one of 10 shirts having a defect, maybe one out of every 50 has a defect. To do the job more quickly, maybe produce 15 shirts an hour instead of 10 shirts. Produce higher quality work. Have shirts that when people look at this, wow, this is a well-made shirt. So the goal of an instructional designer is to help people learn, but also if they're working in an organization in the workplace, also is to help people perform the job better. And this is what I mean by that. These are some of the key ideas behind performance improvement. Okay? One more key idea about performance improvement. Oftentimes, we don't need to have an instructional program, a formal instructional program, to help people do their job better. Let's say we're working in that shirt factory, and I'm the owner of the company, and I see that the employees are producing 10 shirts an hour, and 2 of the shirts, on average, out of every 10, are defective. 2 of the 10 shirts are defective. We have to destroy them because they're not made well. I might go to my instructional designer and say to him or her, they don't know how to make the shirts. They don't know how to operate the equipment. Go back and teach them some more. Give them some formal lessons. But it isn't always the case. Thank you. Thank you. Tea? Oh, okay, good. I need some energy. I think some of you need some energy too. I see some of you sleeping already. I understand. Okay, so we have a problem. 2 out of every 10 shirts are defective. I'm the owner of the company. Right away I think they don't know how to do it. We need to give them some instruction. Let's bring them into the classroom and train them again. But maybe the problem isn't instruction at all. Maybe the problem is a motivational problem. If you're getting paid so many baht per hour, and it doesn't matter whether the shirts are good or bad, then you don't care very much. You know, you're busy talking to your next worker, you're thinking about the fight you had with your spouse last night, you're thinking about going out for dinner, and you're getting paid the same. Maybe the problem isn't that you don't know how to do the job, it's that you're not motivated to do the job well. So oftentimes we can use methods other than instruction to help people do the job better. If I tell you, you're going to get a bonus if all 10 shirts you make every hour are without defect. Maybe that will solve the problem. Maybe we don't need to design an instructional solution to the problem. So there are a variety of methods other than formal instruction that we can use to solve these problems. We can come up with motivational techniques. Or we can give workers better feedback. If a worker keeps on making the same mistake over and over again, sometimes it's simply... You want me to hold that microphone? I'm going to be very clumsy. 2 devices, I can't handle it. I'll end up talking into this and trying to... Okay. Okay. I get very excited about what I'm teaching, and I walk all around the room. People are getting dizzy by the time they finish hearing me, but I'll try to work this out. Okay, so oftentimes we can use things other than instruction. We don't always have to design things.
ตั้งอย่างนี้นะตรงนี้เลยครับจะลอง
จะไกลไป
This is why I like instructional design better than media, because when it's media, I'm getting all
ไม่
confused.
ต้องมูกล้อง
ครับ
Okay, so oftentimes we don't have to use formal instruction. We have a problem. People are not performing as well as we want them to do. They're not doing their jobs as well as we want them to do. We want to improve their performance. Immediately we think, oh, we need to teach them. We need formal instruction. If you're taught how to design instruction, then you have a hammer, a tool that you can use. So every time you see a problem, you think you need a hammer to solve it. You think every problem is a nail. Okay, here's a problem, it's a nail, I have to hammer it. But sometimes the problem isn't a nail, it might be a screw. You need a different tool to solve that problem, okay? So trying to use a hammer to tighten a screw is not going to work, right? It's not going to work. So just because we're experts in designing instruction doesn't mean that every time we see a problem, we need to design instruction. We can design motivational techniques. We can design better feedback systems. I was the chairman of my department for 9 years. And I hope you're not chairman for 9 years because you go crazy after 9 years. But I had a secretary. And during the first year, she was making lots of mistakes. But I was very young, and I was a little bit scared to tell her about the mistakes she was making. She was doing the budget, and she wasn't doing it quite right. At the end of the year, we had to fill out an evaluation form, and I did. And on the evaluation form, I gave her a low mark on the budget. And she said to me, why didn't you tell me this 7 months ago, 10 months ago? Why did you wait until the last minute? Had you told me back then, had you given me better feedback, my performance would have improved. So sometimes, and she was right. All she needed to have was more feedback and she could have done better. So when you see a problem, when people are not doing their job well, you need to recognize maybe instruction is the answer, but maybe it's not. Maybe I can do something else, like make better selections of who I hire for the job, or change these procedures in the workplace so that they can then do their job better. So we've now mentioned that there's a third key concept in our field, one that's come about in the past 20 years in America. It may not have quite arrived here in Thailand yet, but will, and that's performance improvement. So as I look at my field, I think there's 3 key ideas. Using media, designing effective instruction, and trying to improve performance in an organization, oftentimes not having to design instruction, but using other techniques. And you don't have to be an expert in all of these. If you can just recognize that a problem is a motivational problem, you can work with somebody else to come up with a motivational solution. You don't have to be the expert, but you saved your company a lot of money and a lot of time by not taking each employee into the training room and training them when they really didn't need the training. Okay, so that's trend number 1. And you're saying, I hope he goes through the next 9 trends a lot more quickly than that one. What I'm going to do with almost every trend that I show here is give you some data, some information to let you know that I'm not just making these things up, that this is really happening in the real world. So here's some data about the performance improvement movement and the notion that people use methods other than formal instruction to help their employees learn. This organization, ASTD, American Society for Training and Development, American Society for Training and Development, has over 30,000 members in the United States. Many of them are from other parts of the world, mainly from the United States. And these people work for businesses, companies with big training departments, training employees to do the job better. And every year, ASTD sends out a survey asking these 30,000 people, or a subset of them, about what they do. In 2008, 5 years ago, the survey they sent out asked the people, what methods other than formal instruction does your company use to help improve performance in the workplace? And here's what the organization said. It's hard to see, but at least you have it there in print. And the red line is the important one, this actual use. So for example, almost 80%, well first of all, let's say 90% said, oh, we use formal classes to teach things to our employees, almost 90%. I think that most of them use was on-the-job training. But 90% said we use formal instruction. But look at all these other methods. About 80% said they use knowledge bases, 76% job aids, and so on. So what we see here is, sure, companies are still doing a lot of formal training, but in addition to that, they're using a wide variety of methods other than formal instruction. All of these, except for this one, are methods other than formal instruction to help people learn, help do their job better. So it's easy for me to come up here and tell you, learn this, but I want to show you the data that supports what I'm saying. What this tells me is my students have to learn about these other methods. If they're going to work and be employable for big organizations, they have to learn about some of these trends. Two of the trends that are listed up here are going to lead me to trend number 2, the creation of knowledge bases, and they said almost 80% of the respondents said we use those, and the creation of communities of practice, about 63% said they use that. And that leads me to trend number 2, what is called knowledge management. How many are familiar with the term knowledge management? Okay, I'm glad, because when only a few of you are familiar, that means it's worth me telling you about it. Okay, that's good. If you all raise your hand, I could go home right now. Okay? And some of you are saying, I wish you'd go home, but please don't say that. Stick with me. Okay, so here's an organization, and it could be any organization. It could be a university, it could be a business, but in every organization, people are seeking knowledge. They have questions. Maybe they're technical questions. How do I use this piece of equipment? Maybe they're manufacturing questions or human resource questions. And in the organization, there are people who have the answer to these questions. The problem is, how do you get this information when you have a question? You have a technical question. So maybe you go to the information technology people and ask them the question. Sometimes they answer it correctly, sometimes they don't. If they don't, maybe you go to a different department, the HR department or the training department. And what that results in is something like this, what I call knowledge chaos. People going all over the place to get an answer and not always getting the right answer. Knowledge chaos. How can we improve this? How can we make it more efficient so that when people have a question, they get the answer they need efficiently? What we can do, and what people in our field are doing, is create a knowledge management system. And this isn't all that different if you think about something like Google or some of our search engines. You simply take the knowledge within an organization and then systematically insert it, develop it, so that it appears in a knowledge management system in the form of some digital device like a computer. Then, when people in an organization have a question, instead of going directly to try to find the person who has the answer, they type in something in the knowledge management system, just like you do with some search tools that you use. And if it's a well-designed system, the answer comes out for them much more efficiently, much more effectively. So organizations who are trying to help people answer questions more effectively and efficiently are using knowledge management systems to get the information to the people who need the information. So, let me now have you show you what I mean by knowledge management, give you a quick definition of it. It simply means using electronic means to collect and store information within an organization. Getting the information that's in the organization through interviews, through data entry, storing it within some kind of electronic data system, and then making it easily accessible to individuals who need it. So that's what knowledge management is all about. Collecting and storing valuable information, expertise, insight, and making that information easily accessible to people who need it. One of the big advantages of knowledge management in the United States today is that a lot of people are what we call in America baby boomers, people who were born after World War II. And they're about ready to retire now, like me, although they'll never get me to retire. I'm going to stay up here until I fall down on the floor. You'll retire before ours. What happens when people who've been in an organization 35 years retire? The knowledge they have disappears. It's no longer available in the organization. So unless the organization can capture that knowledge, collect it, and store it, when I leave, it's going to be very hard for me to impart my wisdom, my knowledge, that may not be written anywhere, but only in my head, to others. So what organizations are trying to do is interview people who have